Hey, everybody, welcome back to Reasonably Happy. I'm your host, Paul Ollinger. Let me ask you a question. Are you an ambitious person who has trouble focusing? I am. And maybe you'll benefit like I did from reading the book of my next guest. Greg McKeown has written 2 New York Times bestsellers, including Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less, which has been voted by Goodreads as the #1 leadership and success book to read in a lifetime, and Effortless, Make It Easier to Do What Matters Most. And that's what we're here to talk about today. How do we get out of the automatic actions that aren't as productive and focus our time and energy on the things that help take us where we really do want to go in life? Greg is one of the most sought-after public speakers globally and has spoken to over 500 companies while traveling to more than 40 countries, and his books have been translated into 37 languages, so that's kind of a close number. His clients include Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Nike, and he hosts the Greg McKeown podcast, ranked in the top 5 of all self-improvement podcasts, and he's hosted folks like Arthur Brooks, Matthew McConaughey, and Maria Shriver. His work has been covered in The New Yorker, The New York Times, Time, Fast Company, the Harvard Business Review, and he's been on all kinds of TV and radio networks like NPR, NBC, and Fox. Most importantly, he is followed by the one and only Steve Harvey, and I'll be asking him about that. Enjoy this conversation with Greg McKeown.
You're never going to be perfectly happy all the time. The best you can hope for is to be reasonably happy. Most of the time.
You tell a funny story in the book, Essentialism, about how you went to a meeting while your wife was delivering. Was it your first child?
We never tell the child.
Your child doesn't listen to podcasts, does it?
We just don't say which child it was for everybody involved. And it's interesting that you say it's funny because it's not funny, but it also was really defining. I got an email from a colleague at the time, said, look, Friday between 1 and 2 p.m. would be a very bad time for your wife to have a baby because I needed to be at this client meeting. And I'm sure they were joking, but still, as it turns out, our daughter was born in the early hours of Friday morning.
How so inconsiderate of her.
Yes, yes. Exactly. And instead of being focused, I was on my laptop, on my phone, and not focused on the essential thing in that moment. And then, to my shame, I went to the meeting, and really, I learned the simplest of lessons, which is if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And it turns out that even though that experience may be unique to me, it seems to name something that is common in the modern life experience, which is people feel stretched too thin at work or at home. They feel busy but not necessarily productive. They feel that sense of their day being hijacked by other people's agenda for them. And so it turns out I'm not alone. And so this, in some ways, is what sparked a bit of a movement. I ended up calling it Essentialism. And that's a decade and more now. It's been an extraordinary learning journey for me and for those that have come along with me.
And does your wife still bring up the incident in the hospital?
No, she really doesn't. I mean, we get. I know
it's a great story.
But no, we've actually. I have a podcast myself, and we took to the podcast in our very first episode and talked about this. I share my side of the story in the book, but this was her chance to go on record and share her side of the story, and that too was interesting to unpack.
If I try to summarize the book in a few words, to me, this is where I come down on it, and I could be completely wrong, but maybe this is how I see the worldview and bring my worldview to the book. But it's the battle against obligation, I have to do, and opportunity, I choose to do. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I like that framing. There's a few different ways to think about it. One way is just to think about the one decision that makes 1,000 decisions. So the word priority came into the English language in the 1400s, right? It's singular. It stays singular for 500 years, which is pretty extraordinary, that people weren't using the term in its pluralized form, right? It wasn't priorities. It was priority because that's the usefulness of the word.
Because it makes no sense in the plural.
Yeah. Yeah. There was the very first thing, the priorest thing, one thing. So you can't have very, very many very first before all other things. And yet we sort of buy into that nonsense of non-essentialism when we just say, well, it all matters, it's all equally important, and I have to do it all now. And it's not a recipe for fulfillment or success or to achieve our highest point of contribution, which, those are all things that matter. And so figuring out an alternative way, a different way, seems to be relevant and valuable.
If I were to ask you your fundamental value, what do you call it? Your essential intent, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I've used a structure for this that I think could be useful to other people as well. And it's like basically verb, population, outcome, where you say, okay, this is what I do, this is who I do it for, and this is why, this is the outcome I seek. And I don't normally share my own essential intent, but I have taken that structure and applied it at lots of various horizon levels, including, the 100-year vision level, so that you're really thinking beyond yourself, and using that perspective to be able to evaluate all of the different options that are in front of us right now. Because what lasts longest is what's most important. And so in this moment, in this day, in this minute, it's easy to be conned into believing that everything has approximately equal value. Whereas from the longer perspective, it's obvious that some things are, there's a vital few, and then there is everything else, the trivial many. Well, I didn't come up with the phrase, but I love the idea that it's difficult to overstate the unimportance of practically everything.
Who said that? That's pretty.
But we don't. We don't see it until. Actually, I don't remember who said it, but I just know it's not mine. And so, well, what do you do when you get believing the opposite of that? One thing you can do is take the very, very long-term perspective and say, well, will it matter 100 years from now? Some things will, but most things don't. And so that's a way to be able to try and, sift between those things that are actually essential and all just the other good things or the completely trivial things.
One of my favorite guests on the podcast has been Barry Schwartz, who's an academic known very well for his book, The Paradox of Choice. And in consumer decision-making, 35 pairs of jeans doesn't help us pick a better pair of jeans for ourselves. We take longer to make a decision, and we end up having FOMO and regret about our purchase. How do guardrails in the things we choose to do in life lead us to make better decisions?
Yeah, I mean, look, what's happened over the last, since the word priority became pluralized in the Industrial Revolution, is that we've had an absolutely massive expansion of optionality. And even though we're familiar with that, like, for example, from Paradox of Choice and others that have spoken to the issue, we're still so used to it. We're living in it so continually that we really are like fish you discover last, who just don't even notice how much things have changed. Before, let's say 1870, there's no options at all. I mean, the survival is your option.
Right.
We've only had hot showers for 50 years. Like, Warren Buffett says that to be alive today is to have more options, life expectancy, quality of life, chances for education, chances for travel, as Rockefeller had. Anyone in a developed country has the equivalent of a Rockefeller sense of opportunity. That's an enormous change in the human condition. And Drucker captured this so beautifully when he said, look, he said 200 or 300 years from now, when people look back, and he used the term e-commerce, and look back at our times and try to write about our times from a sensible perspective, he says it won't be e-commerce. And he lists these things, what it won't be. He says it will be a fundamental change in the human condition. He said for the first time, the majority of people and massively increasing number of people have an overwhelming set of choices and options. He said, and then added, and society is totally unprepared for it. So what's happened is that the circumstances have changed massively, but our ability to navigate that level of optionality has not kept pace. And that's why we live so often on the edge of what my wife Anna and I call red brain, where we're just so cognitively drained and strained. And so if you take the same approach to decision making as you would have done 50 years ago, let's say, then you just, every decision will drain you. Okay, I want to buy the pair of jeans you're saying. Well, the number isn't even 30 now.
Yeah.
As you might have in a store. The option is 3,000. And that's not even the number. The number's far greater, but that's for every decision. Every purchasing decision is like that. And so you want to do all this research and you want to think through it all. And of course it's overwhelming. And so, yes, I mean, the idea of sufficing, right, rather than optimizing is relevant, where you say, look, what's good enough for this decision making? Or what I think is a helpful way to think about this is to have extreme criteria, because the circumstances we're in, the optionality is extreme. And so you want to say, well, if it's not a clear yes, it becomes a clear no.
Hell yes or no. I think that's a very useful metric for making decisions.
Yeah, it's a 90% rule. So you're saying, okay, if it isn't, to just move on quickly. Just move on quickly. There's lots of other options. There's lots of other things to pursue. You don't have to get stuck in the muddy middle.
If I were to decide today that I'm going to be an essentialist and that I'm going to pursue this line of an approach to the world, what do I need to do?
I mean, I think it starts with a mindset shift, to discover how dominant non-essentialism is in our own minds. We didn't consciously choose it. We absorbed it through the pores of our skin, through the air we're breathing, through the norms of our times. And it's like this. We've picked up or have maintained we could call it like a productivity paradigm. And again, Industrial Revolution, which transformed the world. I mean, I'm not knocking the Industrial Revolution. It significantly improved many, many things, but it also, we sort of threw out the baby with the bathwater. And so what you want to do is kind of something like this. Realize that you're living in a coal mine, or rather you think you are, and you've lived your life that way. That's productivity mindset. How do you get as much stuff from point A to point B? It's just to get the coal out, as much coal as possible. But actually, the whole time, you've been living in a diamond mine. That there are a few things that are so valuable, so important, so disproportionately impactful, things that will last for so long and matter so much more than other things, that it's justified to change all of your behavior. How would you change your behavior? You'd create space to explore. If you knew that there's just a few diamonds, you'd say, okay, well, I need to create the space to find those. It's justified to look for the diamonds. And then you say, okay, well, then I would also want to eliminate all the other stuff, because that's such trivia and it's taking away from the diamonds. And you want a system for doing this on an ongoing basis. And that's the idea of essentialism. It's a disciplined pursuit of less but better. And it's an ongoing process: explore, eliminate, and execute. And so I think the mindset shift will implicate and indicate, prescribe, let's say, the way forward in our lives, better than a single tactic. And of course, I can give tactics and immediately executable ideas, but the mindset is the key idea, not a productivity paradigm, but a prioritization paradigm. That's the big idea. Once you shift that, it changes.
In the coal mine metaphor, what I do is work longer and harder and get more coal out of the ground, which might not have a terrible amount of marginal value. In the diamond mine paradigm, how does my day look different than in the coal mine scenario?
Okay, let's give a specific example. So I just created and released the Essentialism Planner, which is a tool that I use to help me in the diamond mine. So everybody knows that sensation when they wake up in the morning, they have like 3 seconds of peace, and then it all hits them. All that noise, all that non-essentialist comes charging at us like rhinos, and that's it. And we're off. And we reach to the phone, and that's full of all of that noise as well. And so therefore, the noise starts to guide us in our day. That's the coal mine. That's the productivity mindset. So instead of that, you say, okay, well, what would happen if I just created a power half an hour? Either the first half an hour of the day or a half an hour somewhere else, where you say, what's the most important thing to do today? There's a 1, 2, 3 method. The one most important priority. Maybe that's a 2-hour commitment to spend on something that really matters. Then 2 things that are essential and urgent, and 3 things that are maintenance. And that becomes sort of like a done for the day list. It doesn't mean you have to stop when it's done, but it means when I've done those things, there's a sense of satisfaction. The important and urgent and the maintaining items that make tomorrow's life easier have been addressed. And those have got the priority focus. And so that's, that would be an illustration of this. You take the time to be able to discern better. Because look, if you don't know what's important now, then what's important now is to figure out what's important now. And the power half an hour is one way to get there.
Hey, everybody, we'll be right back with Greg McKeown in just a second. I wanted to encourage you to listen to this conversation all the way to the end because it goes in some very unexpected places. I had no idea we would go where we ended up going. And before this is over, Greg will share a touching, very scary, and informative anecdote about his daughter's near-death experience that only was avoided through some very intentional listening and commitment to understanding the other person. And you'll, by listening, by the time we get there, you'll understand how that's relevant to essentialism. That's one thing. He's also, and this comes at the end as well, he's also going to offer up a 7-word question that will help you. That's you, listener and or viewer, if you're on YouTube. Hi, I'm pointing to you on YouTube. A 7-word question that will help you be a better spouse, parent, and friend, and will help you understand your fellow human more effectively. It's super simple, and I'm not going to tell you because I'm going to make you listen. So listen all the way to the end. Also, folks, while I have you, please subscribe and or follow, depending upon which app you're using to listen to this fine podcast on. Don't want you to miss the next episodes coming up. By following and subscribing, you'll get every episode of Reasonably Happy delivered to your phone and or app on which or tool on which you're listening. So please subscribe. And if you have a second, click on the link in the show notes to rate and review Reasonably Happy. If you haven't done it in a while, please do it again. And don't be a jerk and put something like the last few people put in there. Somehow they found controversy in my conversation about college applications and reviews. It was the most well-intentioned conversation with an author who's doing a great service for his reader. Anyway, whatever. Some people are just going to be tools anytime. Anyway, follow your heart. Write something interesting in the review. That's it for now. Now back to Greg McKeown. You mentioned 3 steps that you line out in the book: explore and evaluate, 2 eliminate, 3 execute. How do I take a personal inventory. I mean, exploration is that's an inventory, right? And saying what matters to me, what's important. How does a person begin that self-exploration?
I recommend, and this is also in the planner, even though I'm not making a particularly big point about the planner, but the first section.
Everybody buy the planner.
Well, that isn't. It just happens to be the answers to the questions you're asking.
No. It's very. You talk about these ideas, and you got to make them practical at some point, right? And so that's
and it's taken me a while through trial and error, years in fact, to try and find something that I think, this really helps me and it helps other people. So once a quarter, hold a personal quarterly offsite, where you're doing for your life the equivalent of what Marie Kondo would do for your closet. Where, when she asks the question, does it spark joy? What she's saying is, look, the 90% rule, if it's not a clear yes, it becomes a clear no. Okay, that's the right criteria, but what's the process? Well, the first thing that you would do in a closet situation is to take everything out, right? You go, that's everything in the closet. Let's get it all out so we're looking at it. And then you go through everything item by item, evaluating it. If it doesn't spark joy, it's at least questioned. You either move it on, pass it on, throw it away.
Yeah.
So that only less but better remains. Well, that's the same for the personal quarterly offsite, is you're saying, well, what's happening? Let's get all that noise out. Let's do a download of everything in the mind. David Allen makes the point that the mind is it's a great thing, but a very poor office. And we can only really process one or maybe top two things at any given moment. And so all that other stuff, let's say there's 100 or 200 or 300 things in our mind right now trying to get attention, is utterly exhausting, and it's draining the battery of our mind much faster than a focused approach would. So what's happening? That's the first part of the quarterly offsite. Just get it all out. So what? Well, what's the news? Let's evaluate it. Let's go through it. What's key? And now what am I going to do about it so that I have a plan to be able to leave and execute? The idea is that all of us will be off track most of the time. But if you have a mechanism for coming back on track, then you'll still arrive where you want to, approximately when you want to. But only if you admit that you're so likely to be lost. I sometimes think that there's only two kinds of people in the world now. There are people who are lost and there are people who know they are lost. The non-essentialist is lost but doesn't know it. The essentialist is lost but knows it.
Right.
And then you know what to do about it. Then you can go through the process I just described, get it all out, start to make sense of it, make a plan, remove the stuff that isn't actually important at all.
I'm going to ask for some free consulting right now for my life, because I reached out to you and I said, I'm ambitious, but I've struggled with focus. I'm doing 4 things professionally. I do this podcast, I write a Substack, I speak professionally, and I do stand-up comedy. Now, if you were to have a Venn diagram, these things would overlap to some degree, but I'm good at all these things, but I'm not breakthrough at any of them. How would you advise me to figure out a way to find the diamonds in any one of those 4 spheres?
Well, if you could only do one of those things superbly well, which would
Don't make me choose, Greg. You can't make me choose.
I can kill the babies. What's the one thing?
Comedy, stand-up comedy.
Right. I think I knew that. I think I knew that because of signals in this conversation from the beginning. And I'm not doing a very good job.
Was it the part about me being congested? Was that the part about
Were we even going at that point? I love it.
I don't know. I can't remember when we started.
No, it's that. Well, for a start, you framed the story in the hospital as a funny story, and nobody else does that but you, which is just not criticism by any means. It just revealed something about you. That's all. Okay, so if that's really what you want to do, then it's like I'm not saying that's what you should do, and I'm not even suggesting what I'm about to say is what you should do.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if you really want that, if you mean it, you actually do have to make other trade-offs. Here's one.
All right, we got to end this podcast, Mike. We're done.
Yeah. That might be right. But you don't have to. It doesn't have to be the. It does. It's the disciplined pursuit of less, not the undisciplined pursuit of less.
Yeah.
And that does matter, because I'm not advocating that people should say no to everyone and everything without really thinking about it.
Leave
That
my
would be a different
family
book.
and go on the road.
Right. Well, that would be noism, right? That if you just, everything becomes a no.
Yes.
And that'd be a different book. This is Essentialism. But with you, like, I was just reading a book about that got me thinking about this idea. It was almost like kind of the original sin that they were trying to apply in a psychological meaning to our lives right now. And if I can capture the words of it, it was claiming a prize that we have not paid a price for, that we have not developed the competence for, but because we just want it, we grab it, or we complain that we don't have it.
That's
Or we
artistry
envy those
without artistry without struggle. Is that the
not
concept?
artistry without struggle? No, I think it's just wanting the prize without paying the price. I think that's kind of what it is. You know, I see all the time people doing things that I think, oh, that's really amazing. That would be great. I would love that. And then, like, how presumptuous do I have to be about it? How blind do I have to be at what they paid to get there? I'm thinking of podcasting for a start. The podcast list just came out, top 10 podcasts in the world, right? I have a couple of friends who are on that list. And well, first of all, I feel great about their success. There's nothing in me that's like, oh, they shouldn't have that. But I think, man, I would love to be on that list, you know, for that moment. And then I think, what right do you have to be on that list, Greg? Have you paid? Chris Williams is one of the people. Maybe I shouldn't name it, but like I've known him for a long time, and he has the price he's paid. I don't mean that he's paid too big of a price. I'm not making anything suggested like that. He's just worked so hard for so long to achieve that. He absolutely deserves to be on the list. Do I want to pay that price? That's what I have to figure out.
Right.
This is all, I don't know, it sounds like I'm talking about me. I'm talking about you. It's like, okay, if you want comedian to be the thing, hey, are you willing to pay the Seinfeld price? Because then you have a far better chance of achieving it. And you have a sort of, what I would describe it is like having justice chase you, like in a good way. That is, the founding fathers had this phrase. They said, we might not win, but we're going to fight as if we deserve to win, so people will say, you deserved to win. And that's such a beautiful idea, in my opinion, because it's like, and it's at the heart of essentialism, actually, because it's saying the non-essentialist believes there are no trade-offs. That's the lure of it. Do you want to be a comedian, or do keynotes, or do a podcast, or do the Substack, or there are other things on your list too, I'm guessing. There'll be other things too. Those are just the 4 that you're leading with. I might be wrong. And you say, well, the non-essentialist wants to believe you can just do it all, just like I do. I'm tempted by that all the time. Of course I want to be able to do it all. Of course we want to succeed at everything. The essentialist doesn't just admit the trade-offs, doesn't just embrace it, they celebrate it.
Yeah.
It's like they love it. Why? Because that is the source of competitive advantage. That's how, once you start to win at what you believe is most important as your own unique mission in life, your own highest point of contribution, actually people can't really compete with you because they're not willing to make the trade-offs you're willing to make.
Right, right.
So How uncomfortable have I made you? That's the question.
I was fully prepared for that, and that's why. And look, I definitely have this choice in my life. I have this in front of me. I've been working really hard at 4 different things. I haven't been working terribly disciplined at these 4 things. But I think in our modern circumstance in entertainment, as to be an author, okay, you're an unknown author, whoever you were 12 years ago. Today, you take a manuscript to an editor. What's the first thing they ask you?
You mean then or now?
Today, what do they ask you? An unknown author.
I assume what you're saying is like, well, what's your social media?
100%.
You know?
That's exactly. So and I was trying to think about this in the framework of instrumental desires versus terminal desires. So the terminal desire is the thing we want for itself, and instrumental desire is the thing that gets us to the thing that we think is going to make us happy.
Sure.
So I want to be booked. I want to sell tickets in Peoria. I've got to have people who know me. So I either have to be on Saturday Night Live, The Tonight Show, or I have to have 500,000 Instagram followers who are engaged with my stuff. So it's not about the craft; it's about the platform that enables the craft. And so this is, and so. The podcast, the Substack, these are, I enjoy doing them. I mean, I wouldn't be having this very satisfying conversation with you right now.
I know, it's like ironic now, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I enjoy.
We're talking about not doing it while we're doing it.
Yeah, no, but and I like look, I've met people I would never ever have been able to meet. I've grown, I've learned, I've done so many things that are important.
Yeah,
it's this is the life that happens while we're busy making other plans. But in the creative world today, you have to have the platform. And I know very, very few people who view the creation of Instagram Reels as a creative end in itself, right? That it's a goal to do the thing that they actually want to be doing with the platform that they theoretically will build.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, let me make sure I do, though. I mean, what you're saying is, yeah, that's all very well to say, here's the thing you want. Stop everything else. Do the thing.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, but that isn't really the world we live in, because now there is this approximation or like gatekeeping function that says, well, if a person has to choose who they're going to have on the Tonight Show, or who they're going to give the opportunities to, whatever the opportunities are, one of the key, not perhaps the top key, but certainly one of the keys.
One of the top 2 or 3 keys, for sure.
I would agree. Is just, it has become this sort of placeholder of like, well, how many Instagram followers do they have? What's the social media impact? Because if we have somebody here who has 1 million and somebody else has 0, but all things are being equal, of course we choose the person that's 1 million. And maybe it's even more than that. You don't even look at the people until you've said, okay, well, what's the social media following? So that becomes a first step of denial into a certain world, right? So, so that's what I hear you saying. What did I get wrong?
No, I think that's the thing. I think the question then is like, I guess to view, and again, this is for everybody to think about their own lives, not just the one of the dissatisfied creative because he hasn't achieved fame and fortune and selling tickets, selling out of the theater in the Midwest. But it's like, should you focus just on your craft? Is that the only thing? Is that realistic to say that? To say that in the end, if you're just, I mean, I have seen it play out in a small number of cases where people are just so good and they focus so much on the craft that they're going to break through because they're undeniable.
Yeah. Here's my view. Like, I want to say this carefully because I get that right now I'm like, you've put yourself out there. Hey, coach me, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm coming at there as this sort of essentialist coach to do what you're asking. But I want to just be also human for a moment about it because I hate this in reverse, right? Like, I hate that there are things that either there are too many things that I want to see be successful.
Yeah.
And if somebody comes along with surface understanding, as I plainly have in this instance.
No, I think you understand. Because it's the same if you're trying to sell books or get booked to speak, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, but still, it's like no, you got to understand my world and the complexity and how these are connected, and so that. Because otherwise somebody says, oh, just don't do that thing. And it's like, what do you mean don't do that thing? That thing's connected to that thing, connected to that thing. So, so in the one sense, like, first of all, I relate to it in that level.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you want the answer to your question, the answer is yes. Should you just be focused on your craft? Yes. 1,000% yes. Now, does that mean that you should ignore the ecosystem of whatever that craft is? No. You can't ignore the ecosystem of, like, the Jim Collins idea in Good to Great. One of the really sticky ideas in that book is the now I can't remember it. That's ironic, but it's the momentum effect. But he doesn't call it flywheel. There's the word, flywheel. The flywheel effect. This massive thing, and at first you're pushing it, and you can hardly get one cycle done on this process, and then you push again and again, and eventually you have momentum, and it's spinning at great speed, and you barely even have to touch it now. The thing will just juggernaut off.
Yep.
And that's when people become aware of what somebody's achieved. They go, oh, look at that success. Oh, I want that. And it's like, well, you haven't seen the pushing and the cycles that you've gone through before. All success is slowly, then suddenly. But what happens is if we try to do too many disparate things, then we don't get breakthrough momentum with any of them.
Right.
And then that is a cause of deep dissatisfaction and fatigue, because the effort is being put in, but we aren't seeing that breakthrough moment. And so now come back to this question. Do you just focus on the craft? Yes, but what does it mean? When you say, okay, let's say stand-up comedy, that's the thing. That is the one thing. If I really wanted to do something, if I could break through in any of these, that's what I'd break through on. I say, yeah, you go do that thing. Now, you might need a financial way to do it because that doesn't quite cover it. So you have to, you've got different pieces to, I'm not just saying quit one's job and everything works. I've seen people do that, and that isn't right.
Yeah. But you got to pay the bills and feed your kids before you.
Right. But yes, and it's like, if you focus on the craft, on the thing you really feel built to do, pulled to do. So we're assuming that that's the correct answer.
Right.
Then you say, okay, well, what are the minimum things required to make that successful? Can you go do that gig wherever at the local, someone's starting out, they go and get their 5-minute gig, see if they can get something that's working and record it. And that becomes the social media. And you aren't doing one thing on social media, on each of the different platforms, something different. It kind of overlaps. On a Venn diagram, there'd be some overlapping, but it isn't the driving force towards the thing you want. And what happens, we're talking about this, you remember the Goethe quote about this, that the moment one absolutely makes up one's mind, it's like all energy shifts, all people around you, so people and opportunities will suddenly start to manifest themselves in a way that they wouldn't otherwise have done. He says, boldness has genius and magic in it. Begin it now. It's hard what I'm saying. I'm preaching to myself. If I'm preaching to you, it's also to me.
Sure.
I'm in the midst of exactly this kind of wrestle myself right now. So I'm not speaking in terms of, I don't feel, I'm the guru on the mountaintop. Oh, all you need to do is this. It's like I'm in the wrestle right now. I haven't even addressed any of what I'm referring to, but for the last 5 years, I have been focused on a whole new area. And for me, it's the thing that I need to be doing for the next, I don't know how long, as long for the foreseeable future. And every time I really work on it, I have that particular sensation this is the right way.
Mm.
This is the path.
What does that feel like? Tell me.
The feeling.
How do you know? Yeah.
Well, it's. I mean, I think it would be right to call it a spiritual thing. I think that's right. I was talking to a friend recently, and he'd started something, and I used the phrase, when he told me it, I said it's like this gong, like this sort of universe gong that I heard. Like I heard it in me when he told me. It's like, oh, that's the right thing for you. That fits who you are.
You care about it. You're good at it. It feels natural.
No, I'm not saying those things are. I did just say no, but I'm not saying those things are wrong. But I don't. Well, I mean, I've advocated the kind of thing you just said, right? You say, okay, what's the thing you're good at? You like to do it. It's working. And what's the overlap in the center? Well, that's the area to be on. I don't think that's a bad thing to think through at all. No, I don't think those things are wrong. I probably shouldn't have said no. It's just.
This is an improv class. No is fine.
It's clarity.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's something you can just, I don't think it's something you decide and detect as much as, decide and design as much as it is detect. So for me, let me just say what it is so we're not talking abstractly.
Okay.
I mean, like my life was, we've talked about one life-changing moment, but I was just talking to my son about this recently, and he said, when people ask me about essentialism, what was it like growing up, essentialism in the culture of the home, what was it like, and so on, and he's like, yeah, well, we kind of didn't really, there was not like, Dad wasn't talking about essentialism all the time or anything like that. It was just kind of in the air. It was like the way we lived. But he said, honestly though, Dad, he said, that's not really, he's like, that's not true. He said, but I'll tell you what, he said, what you're working on now, that would be a true way of explaining it. And so okay, I don't want to tell you, I know I'm like not getting to it.
Come on, do it.
I will get to it. I will. I'm going to do it right now, but I'm going to do it through a piece of research and a little story, because I think it will make much more sense if I do it this way.
Yeah.
1990, Stanford student, PhD student, publishes a dissertation in which one of the pieces of a dissertation is the Tapper game. Have you heard of it?
I haven't.
Tapper game, she brought 80 people together, divided them to 40 dyads, so 2 people teams, and explains the game. This is the game. One person's a tapper, one person's a listener. They face back to back. And the tapper's going to tap a universally well-known song. She'd identified 25 songs. Everybody knows those lists. All 80 people know those songs. Everyone listening to this or watching this, they all know the songs. And you pick a song, and you're going to tap that song, and the listener has to guess the song. That's it. That's the whole game. She asked the tappers to identify their confidence level that they'd be able to tap this and the other person would guess successfully. The average confidence level across the group was 50%. In actual fact, people were successful about 2% of the time.
Wow.
Now, what she didn't ask the listener what their confidence level was. And so I've replicated this study in various ways and have found that listeners are at least that confident. Overall more confident than even the tappers are. Sometimes when I've run it, it's been as high as 80%. But of course, the results are still the same. It's a 2% approximately success rate. Now, this leads to the idea, right? What is the bottleneck to people living essentialism actually in their lives, in the world in which we actually reside? Not a single world where it's just me on an island making decisions, but an personal reality where it's always relationships and people involved. The biggest obstacle is not talent, it's not strategy, it's not execution. It's this, that people are overconfident in their ability to understand each other. And that's it. And what I'm saying there, I think I can prove at many, many levels of both abstraction and data. It is massively, disproportionately important. And we could say it this way. We could say, well, deep, precise understanding of each other drives successful communication. And successful communication drives successful relationships, and successful relationships drive success in life.
And,
right?
Societies and
societies
industries.
And everything.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we can do it that way, or we could go the other way around as well. We could say, well, what are the societal discombobulations that we're observing? What is the symptoms that we're seeing in our society? In a polarized society where 1 in 5 people in the United States will say that they have stopped speaking to a close friend or family member because of polarization, right? Where you have gridlock in Washington, D.C., where we could just go on and on with the loneliness pandemic that we have, going on in the world, and so on. We talk about lots and lots of these symptoms at the surface, and we could say, okay, so what's behind that, and what's behind that? And we would come back to the same idea.
Yeah.
That there is a missing capability in our lives, and therefore also in society, that we don't even know is missing. So let me try to articulate that for a second. If I ask a group of people, okay, raise of hands, who's an above average driver? Right? Everyone puts their hands up, right? And so, of course, that can't be true.
Yes.
You can't have everyone be above average, but that's exactly what people will believe is true. So they have a blind spot. Yeah. If you ask the same question, similar question, if you say, okay, who's an above average listener? All hands will go up, or the majority. And so that's also a blind spot because, of course, not everyone can be an above average listener. But then I call this now a double blind spot problem, because what I've been studying is a very particular type of understanding that is so unusual, so rare, that almost nobody has ever experienced it. So it's a tangible thing. It's real. It's not hypothetical. Carl Rogers was the first to identify it and really articulate and speak about it in 1952. This has been, I've experienced it for the last 25 years. That totally changed my life, discovering this 25 years ago, little more than 25 years ago. And so even the people who are raising their hands, I'm an above average listener, are using a definition of listening and understanding that is not the one I mean, which is a kind of strange thing because it means there's an understanding gap about the understanding gap. So there is a form of connection, a form of understanding that people have not experienced. But if they could experience it and develop it, it would be the antidote to 90%, I will put to you, 90% of the other symptoms in their relationships, in their communication, in their families, in their workplaces, with their customers, and in society. This is the pivot upon which everything else turns. This is the bottleneck. And, I'm obviously, there's a lot that one could unwrap with what I'm saying, but I'll pause for a second.
Sounds like there's another book that we'll be talking about in a year or two.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I interrupted my life. My family was supportive of it. We all moved to Cambridge, England, to pursue a mid-career doctorate in research while simultaneously writing this next book. But I'll say this is important. I'm not trying to write another book. Yes, there needs to be a book. You can't, I don't think there is, I'm convinced, absolutely convinced, that you can't achieve the goal without the book. But it's not, the book is not the point. Even a best-selling book would not be the point. Even a phenomenon book, should you be so lucky, would not be the point. The point is to actually help people really understand each other, because they are not right now, and they don't even know it.
You know what I would call? You know what I would call that?
Yeah, what would you call it?
An essential intent.
Yeah,
that's what's pulling.
Yeah.
It's the understanding from which all these other things flow. You know, the many speeches you will give, the book and its translations and its spinoffs and all that comes from a commitment to a core ideal.
Yeah,
you're living in essentialism in this pursuit.
Yeah, I love that connection. That's exactly how it feels for me. Although it's a bit meta to get there, because let me just say one more word about it. So I had to check this data to be sure that this was true, but I'd heard that no single country on Earth has the capability to put a man on the moon today. And I thought surely that can't be true. It's just kind of an interesting headline, but I've gone and done the research, and it is true. So we put a man on the moon, and then we put 5 more people on the moon, and then never since. And we think that what happens is that we learn technology, we bank it, knowledge is learned, gained, and never lost. But it isn't at all what happens. If you don't have people developing and living out that knowledge, then it becomes completely forgotten. Even if you have, as with NASA, literally has the blueprints for the moonshot. But then when they finally decided they were going to rebuild the capability, they realized the blueprints are insufficient knowledge. They're good to have, but they're insufficient. So they started a program where they went back and interviewed the engineers who were still alive from the original moon landing, so that they could start to piece together this capability, what they'd done, how they'd done it, so that they could start to grow it again, rebuild a lost technology. And at some point in the not too distant future, there will be people will be on the moon again, and so on, right? Like, that is being rebuilt currently. But I use that as metaphor back to that 1952. It was an article with Carl Rogers, the most significant psychotherapist of the 20th century, but not well known, who felt that he had discovered what he called was a test tube solution, way of helping people to be able to work together. He tested it eventually it started with his therapy sessions, where he found that if he would have a single intent with the person he was sitting next to, that it would have an extremely potent transformational effect upon them in being able to help them to organize their lives and orient their lives upwards. And so instead of him giving them advice or telling them what to do, evaluating or judging them, all the things we would normally do, trying to fix their life or any of those things, he said single intent, only to understand, nothing else. And he saw this absolute, just tremendous transformations within people, because they could work through what was really happening under the surface and get to what the really valuable, essential stuff is deep down, instead of the trivial, many at the surface, many layers down, like an onion, many layers down, you find the essential but vulnerable underneath. Might be 1,000x more valuable than the stuff at the surface. Then he tested it eventually, in the most extreme cases he got to was where he would have small groups of people with totally polarized views, maybe one the hot topic political issues of the day. Half would agree X, the other half Y. So they think they're 100% right and the other side is 100% wrong. And instead of ignoring each other or yelling at each other or talking past each other, he established one rule, that if they had a neutral facilitator there to help them with this rule, within a tiny fraction of time, they had understanding and cooperative sense with each other and a chance to be able to respectfully work together going forward. One session could be sufficient to do it. And here was the rule. You only get to make your point after you've made the other person's point to their satisfaction. That's it. Imagine how fast we would be able to actually make progress if that rule started to be observed. How often have we watched people now, we see it constantly now, talking heads, not just talking at each other, that's no fun, talking over each other, talking at the same time. I remember seeing 5 people talking over each other at the same time.
Yeah.
They're yelling at the same, 5 people on one panel yelling at each other at the same time. Like, there's no understanding. There's not even an attempt to understand. So what that is not misunderstanding. I give it a name I've come up with. It's called disunderstanding.
Yes.
Because the intent is to misunderstand.
Sure.
So you can't make any progress under that circumstance. Once you observe the rule that I've just described, I've been running sessions now with people doing this. Dyads of 2, husband and wife, could be 2 business partners, could be father and daughter, could be any function, could even be strangers. And it's just unbelievable to watch what happens. And people they are experiencing something they have not experienced before. This full circle, when I'm working with organizations and applying essentialism, this is the bottleneck.
Yeah.
When you can have teams that actually start to be able to work together in this way, they can wrestle with the real trade-offs under the surface that are untouchable right now, that are keeping them in gridlock, keeping them in non-essentialist land, where they're trying to just do it all because they can't wrestle down to the real things that are keeping them stuck, that are many layers below the surface. And then you can get to real alignment and momentum and be able to progress together with a group of people. Without that competence, you will just default to non-essentialism.
Yeah. So
and that's exactly what I've observed.
Essentialism is kind of within myself. It's about defining what I value and what's a priority to me. This sounds more like an alignment of essentialism to say, I understand you. Like I've said this before, but my wife and I've been to therapy in the past, and we found it very helpful. And the first thing the therapist does is teaches you how to communicate. She says, what I hear you saying is, and then you have to restate your partner's point of view in loving, affirmative tones. And in so doing, that person feels validated. And you actually, by stating their point of view, you kind of develop some empathy for it. And you can move through that.
Yeah. Well, that's a gateway into it. The reason you've had that experience at all, from a tactical point of view, is because of Roger's impact.
Yeah.
That's literally Roger's. The therapist you're talking about, even if they don't know it, it's Rogers. That's really true. And they're really the only people in society that have had any training at all in this. And my experience is I've worked with a lot of different therapists for different reasons, and both personally and in a coaching mode to them, is that most of them haven't been taught Rogerian listening and understanding skills, but it's still the population in society that has the greatest chance of having been exposed to it. A phrase that I think is useful, you gave a phrase just then. Here's a 7-word phrase that anyone listening can use immediately in the next conversation or in the next argument. And I will give you, I don't give 100% guarantees for much, but I'm pretty close to 100% on this now. Use these 7 words and the person will stop talking and they will listen. And here are the words. 7 words. Let me see if I understand you.
Mm.
And they will stop. Why? Because the deepest fear of our whole lives, literally, this isn't like, it's not hyperbole. Literally is the fear of being misunderstood, or a slightly different word, you could say the fear of being judged. But the fear of being misunderstood, I think, is more precise. And that's what the argument is about. That's what the silence, awkwardness, that's what it's about. Because the first lesson of life, literally the first lesson of life, is that if we are not heard, we will die. And so it goes so much deeper than is obvious. It's not a nice to have. It's a cradle to grave craving And it is physiologically true, because a baby, if they are not heard, if their cry is not heard, they will die physically from no milk. But it's also true that if they're not heard emotionally, we have these horrendous case studies in Romanian orphanages, and also in the first British orphanages, of perfectly healthy babies rolling over and dying because there was no human interaction. And so it's that deep.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest single fear, and the biggest desire, other than surviving, is to be understood, to be seen, to matter. Isn't it just what you're saying when you say, "Oh, I want to be a comedian"? Or like, there's a commonality in all four things.
You just got so deep on me, Greg.
No,
it is literally, it's literally the desire to be heard.
Of course it is. All four are manifestations.
100%.
Yeah. And it's just which way is most satisfying to be heard and connect with other people. And all of these are perfectly good, respectful things. There's nothing wrong. I was about to say there's nothing wrong with just doing the four good things you're doing, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that, or the same for me and all the things I want to do. And then I go, well, but maybe that's not true, because maybe it does make a difference, in fact, a significant difference, to pursue one's highest possible meaning and contribution, because it brings us alive in a different way. So we show up differently to everyone, and we will reach people differently once we're talking about the thing that we, not just talking about the thing, but we're pursuing what it is that we feel, we were, the purpose of our lives, the contributions that we uniquely can make. Yeah. Once we're doing that, it makes a big difference. And so we have a responsibility to go after those things and to make those trade-offs. So the one hand, I'm like, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. And then I'm like, but there is, because the trade-off is real.
Yeah. And I think that
we can't do it all. We cannot do it all.
It's not just to be heard, but for the words to have meaning. And that is,
yeah.
And that's really part of the, working on the craft thing, to say, to make sure that you're creating the style and the format and the topics and the logical flow of things in a way that they actually can break through. Our communications tools today are designed not only to prevent us from understanding each other, but to incentivize us to not understand, or to pretend as if we don't understand. And so, it's harder it's harder for each of us to be heard and to be understood. And yet, while our technology out here has changed, the technology in here hasn't changed. And that conflict creates a lot of psychic pain.
Yeah, well, psychic pain is just right. When I ask people, okay, to come up with one word, think of a time that you felt really deeply misunderstood, and describe it in one word. The words are breathtaking. You can't come up with a list of more provocative adjectives than the words people use. It is terrifying for people. It scars them. It stays with them. They still think of it. It haunts them. It is a terrible feeling, and of course, it's a very universal feeling too. And yeah, I mean, I want to offer sort of one other practical thing, which is, I gave you the 7-word phrase, but there's an additional, like, these are the two most important phrases I'd give to people. The second is, will you put into words what you think I mean? And you can, I did it recently. We'd had a customer service kind of a little bit of a fiasco. Trying to fix one of our windows. Well, my wife is wanting us to fix a window. The lock on it broken. The fiasco that grew out of that was ridiculous. You couldn't replace that one lock, and you couldn't replace that one window. You had to replace, basically, it was sort of like all the windows in your house.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm not even exaggerating. It was really ridiculous. So finally we
Oh.
found like a company that was like, okay, we'll replace 4 windows. That's the minimum we can replace. For
Yeah.
one lock, it is like, anyway, they finally do it. It's taken months. No one would come and like talk to us about it. So it was all sort of very virtual. There lots of opportunity for misunderstanding. Then it was completely misunderstood because what they put in didn't look as we'd anticipated it would look. So it made the room really dark. And we're like, it wasn't really anybody's fault. It's just the process we're following created misunderstanding. So my wife sends an email to the person they were dealing with. She's like so disappointed with it, or she was not unreasonable in her email. She's a bit emotional about it, but she wasn't screaming at anybody. There was no ad hominem attacks or anything. The email we got back was I thought it was just like crazy. I was like, I have never even seen an email like that back from, and it seemed so out of character for the person we've been interacting with. I was like, I don't think there's any use in continuing to communicate via email, right? Like,
Right.
there's something is so dislodged here. So I call and I just asked to talk to this person. Oh, they're in lunch, they're in this and they're whatever. Okay, so, persistent until someone comes on the phone. I mean, it's not the person that has written their name on the email. It was a woman. It was a man. And it was the CEO of the company. And he was the one that written the email in the name of this person, right? Does that make sense? So like, there's like no wonder it didn't sound like them. It wasn't them. It was somebody else. And I wasn't like on my top understander game. I wasn't in great understander mode, but the habits are there enough that even there, I'm like using some of this language. I'm like, listen, we won't make any progress today unless we really want to understand each other. I said, we don't have to have the conversation, but if we want to make any progress, we've got to understand each other. But I was still pretty emotional, so it wasn't my best, you see? But I said those words a few times. I would restate for him, and then I would say, look, can you put into words what you think I mean?
Mm.
And he did it. And that's the point. Now, I'm not saying everyone will do it, but even in that heightened emotive situation where he was clearly judging us, I mean, he said so by the end of the conversation, because how he had read the situation was that we were just like many customers over the years for him who have got the thing and then just go, oh, we're not paying for it. And then he's pretty stuck because it's not really worth his time to really go after people or get into any legal things with. So he ends up just writing off. And there's just X percentage of customers that seem to do this.
Right.
And so he just thought that was us. I'm sharing all of that real life story because even there you can use the phrase.
Yeah.
In
seemingly
meaning. It's about meaning.
Yeah. In seemingly, well, not seemingly, but in just very day-to-day type of interactions with our fellow humans, that this isn't a negotiation with your employer about a raise or with your spouse about the long-term viability of your marriage. It's just, hey, vendor and customer, why don't we try to get along and make this human interaction as productive and painless as possible?
It's universal. It's every key relationship. I think I can try and tie all of this together.
Let's do it, because I need to let you go. You got a lot of work to do.
I can tie it together with a single story. One of my daughters went from the picture of health into what turned out to be an undiagnosed neurological condition where she lost all functionality. She had no executive function. She loss of emotional range. Whole right-hand side of her body moved different pace to the left. She took hours to eat a meal, 2 or 3 minutes to write the last 3 letters of our last name. I remember that moment. And it's all undiagnosed. We have no idea what's going on. Then, through a series of events, my wife finds this one doctor that has this particular reputation for being able to figure out what's going on with unusual cases. And he has a 9-month waiting list because of the demand for him. cancellation comes up, we go see him. When he arrives, it's totally different than anyone else that had been involved in the months and months of this experience. He comes in with like a SWAT team. It's him, somebody recording, videoing the whole thing, somebody reviewing notes. And his orientation was, we are going to find out, we're going to understand that key thing that will give us a clue. Not, hey, we'll do this at some point. Hey, well, people would shrug their shoulders, these neurologists. Well, I don't know. We'll run some more tests. And because everything was coming in the normal range. He was like, we're going to get to it now. We're going to figure it out. And he says, take this dopamine pill to my daughter. Okay, go have lunch all together and come back in an hour. And I'm going to see you again. I mean, I don't know if that's ever happened to you, anything equivalent, but it never happened to me. No, hey, do this and come back right now. Not, hey, we'll get an appointment in a month, or we're doing it now. We come back in and he redoes like a very simple behavioral test, which is to count down from 10, or something like that, backwards. And he turns on his heel and he says, okay, I think we should, I recommend immediate hospitalization and for treatment for encephalitis, which is inflammation of the brain. And that's it. We're doing it right now. And so she was immediately hospitalized. But the plot thickens because he's not the treating physician. So the treating physician, his training is in a different area. So he's wasn't a movement specialist within neurology. He was a geneticist, and so he read the symptoms differently. But not only that, he didn't support the treatment plan. But not only that, once the treatment plan began, and we saw my wife first, and then because she was in the hospital with her daughter, and then us when we came to see her 2 or 3 days into the treatment, all of us could see the first improvements, tiny. Cheeks were rosy. She smiled. She was just laughing a little bit. There were differences, but we knew the change had happened because, of course, we're living with her. We see those differences. But the doctor could not see it, could not hear us, could not listen or understand outside of the story he had. His recommendation was to stop the treatment and manage her to the end because it's a genetic condition. The treatment won't make any difference. We're just wasting the resources, right? So everything turns on that, right? Like literally her life turns on this issue. I went back to the original doctor that had given her the diagnosis later and asked him, okay, what did you see? And he said, well, the speed of her blinking eye increased from the dopamine. And so that meant that I could kind of rule out one area and we could just treat as a form of further diagnosis to see if it works. And then we'd know. So that's it. It all turned on that. We did speak up. We did insist. We did continue, and she was completely healed.
Wow!
And it was completely dependent on that moment. A few years later, we dropped her off for a mission to Brazil, and in the moment of dropping her off, I had this. It was all so happy. I mean, it's like, can you believe it? I mean, it's compared to. I mean, she was fast. She was going to fall into a coma and die, and now she's healthy and back and whole again and herself again, and she's going off on this grand adventure of service for like the next year and a half. I mean, it's like a significant moment. And so it's all a very rejoiceful moment. But within the last 10 minutes, I'm like, I have what I would describe as a kind of essentialist, I don't know, a kind of essentialist judgment day or something. I mean, I saw her life, her whole life, and my whole interaction with her over these previous, almost 20 years. And I kind of, I mean, it was pretty awful, actually. And one of the questions I had was like, well, did you miss it? Did you miss her? Did you get the chance again and then miss her? And I was able to explain that to her later. And she said, Dad, you didn't miss it. She said, you didn't always get it right, but you were kept coming back again and again to try to understand.
Mm.
And I think I can try and draw all of that up into a single insight, which is that life isn't divided into 1x, 2x, 3x important things. Life is divided up into 1x, 10x, 100x, 1000x things. The blinking of the eyelids is infinitesimally small, but infinitely important in her life and our lives and for all of her future posterity and everyone, right? Like how important is that tiny thing? How easy is it to miss it? How easy would it have been for me to miss it? Miss her life, miss what matters, miss the moment, miss who she is, too focused like the second doctor on my own agenda for her and telling her how things have to be, not understanding, not connecting her. And so I just feel like you can take from that story this sort of encapsulation of essentialism writ large.
That's the diamond mine versus the coal mine.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's just the diamonds in the story, of course, the blinking. It's the understanding and being able to see what matters in the moment, what's important now. It's being able to see that the relationship with my daughter and all of our children is so preeminently important. It's life is short, but these things are massively important. If you put those two things together, then it reframes your orientation towards life. You say, okay, I'm going to prioritize the most important relationships in my life, and I'm going to really figure out how to understand and be understood, because that's the thing that will enable everything else in those relationships. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to pass that story and think through it, and it has lots of layers in it for me, but I also think for those that are listening.
Well, thanks, Greg. This has been fascinating, and we went places I didn't imagine we'd go, and that's the magic of podcasting. And maybe why I won't quit. Maybe I won't kill this baby. I don't know. We'll see. But man, I really appreciate your work and your insights and your openness today. Where can our listeners find out more about you?
Oh, if they want to sort of go, where to begin? They can sign up in about 10 seconds. GregMcKeown.com, GregMcKeown.com. You just scroll down and just in 10 seconds you can get the it's a 30-day high quality program for where do you start on the journey of essentialism and effortless, which is the second New York Times bestseller that I wrote. And it's like, just where do you begin? And so you'll get sent these, every few days you'll be sent a new printable and a new insight that you can immediately apply. So it's just a very gentle way of beginning the journey to a life that really matters.
Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. And once again, thanks so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, everybody. That was a conversation that went in places I didn't expect it to go. How about you? We were supposed to speak for about 45 minutes, and it turned out to be an hour and 15. What a treat. He's got a lot of very cool stuff going on in his life. And what a crazy story about his daughter at the end. Holy shit. Holy shit bombs, people. My God. Thank God for effective communication in that situation. Let me see if I understand you, Greg. You're telling me I should quit my podcast and just do comedy full time? Goodness, that would be killing one of my darlings. But I really respect what Greg is trying to do here. He's trying to get all of us to get out of the automated behavior of working in a coal mine, not a coal mind or a cold mind. The world of obligation that we live in, where we think that every day we just have to get out there and shovel shit that has no meaning, when we actually are working in a diamond mine. And if we can just focus and be very purposeful and choose what our essential intent is and work toward that, we'll find product, minerals that are not 1 or 2x as important, but 100, 1,000x. I think that's a really brave and kind of scary way to look at things. And I'm going to try to do it. I actually ordered the Essentialist playbook. What do you call it? The playbook, the manual, the planner. I ordered that this morning because I want to put myself through the exercise of, I don't know if I will quit the podcast. I don't know if I will quit doing corporate speaking to try to focus on comedy only, because I really do love all these things. I'm trying to find the through line, and I hope that that me asking him that wasn't too self-indulgent, and that you got some value, maybe could see yourself in that question. So I'm going to examine, I'm going to do the exercises and just see if I can narrow in a little bit more on my essential intent. Maybe it's not one or the other. Maybe it's answering one question in each of these forums. After all, he writes books, he teaches classes, and he does corporate speaking. All those things have value, but the core element is the essentialism element. And what he's trying to get to at the end there, what he talked about trying to promote how we understand each other. I think that's his core truth. And I think for me, my desire is to speak the truth. I'm to be heard. I'm one of 6 kids. It's not just that I needed to stay alive. I needed to be heard to stay alive as an infant. I was also one of 6 kids growing up. And I'm the 5th of those 6 kids. And I definitely think that informs how important it is for me to be heard. And I think one of the things I want to do is speak the truth, especially in a time when speaking the truth is more important than ever. It's always been important. Next week, I've got an interview coming out with Robin Curnow, who is a former CNN international anchor, grew up in apartheid South Africa, and has seen, some pretty crazy stuff in her lifetime. And we talk, when I say the truth is more important than ever, it's no more important now than it was in 1990 in Johannesburg. I mean, and it was every bit as complicated and threatening and scary to say what was unpopular, at least as much as it is today. But it is different on social media, and I'm trying to speak my truth in what I do, and it's not popular. So I think that's one of my essential intents, is to speak the truth. And because I have the opportunity to do it, I've designed my life so that I have the opportunity to do it. I feel like I have an obligation to do it. I have O negative blood. I'm a universal donor. I give blood very frequently because I feel like I have the obligation to do it. Actually, let me put it differently. Let me put it in essentialist language. I choose to avail myself of the opportunity because my blood type gives me the opportunity to make a disproportionate contribution to other people. And I feel like it would be a missed opportunity to contribute if I didn't. So that's how I'm going to try to think about how I prioritize my time. Let's get in those diamond mines, folks. What else do I have to say here at the end? These are my takeaways. I didn't say they're my takeaways. I think you kind of figured it out. Hell yes or no. That's a great way to think about things. It's 2 of my very closest friends in the world, guys I've been good buddies with for 40 years. We've had some of the best times of our lives together. They're big Fish fans. They're big fans of the band Fish from Vermont. Trey Anastasio and the Jam Band Boys. I don't like Fish. I love those guys, but I don't love Fish. And so when they say, hey, do you want to go see Fish on New Year's Eve? That's not a hell yes. That's I'd rather not. Can I meet you after? Which, by the way, would be 2 a.m. They've been at a Fish show for 3 hours. That's not a hell yes either. That's a no. So I love, and that's, obviously one of the less consequential versions of that. But I love that as a metric. It's very easy to understand, and you can feel if something is a hell yes or if it's a no. And so which makes it such a great rule. Hell yes or no. Let me see if I understand you. God, what a powerful question. So simple. You can change the world with that question. And maybe in some of these debates that we're getting in online, maybe we should be asking that question. Let me see if I understand you. You seem to think that the Intifada means this. I believe it means something else. That is the nature of our disagreement. We don't disagree that innocent people dying is wrong. We disagree on the definition of some important terms, and so we shouldn't make it as personal as it sounds. Can you put into words what I'm trying to say? I might be off just a tad on that. Wow, that's a great way to help a customer service representative express their understanding of a situation or a loved one with whom you are not seeing eye to eye. Anyway, that's it. Man, I really enjoyed this conversation with Mr. McKeown. He's doing good work. He's helping all of us try to be our best. And as you could hear in his own story, he's trying to find his essential intent, trying to hone his essential intent, trying to take it to the next level. And even if you do it a little bit, you're going to be better off for it. I wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and a Happy New Year. I look forward to seeing you. I don't think we have another episode coming out this year. I might put one out next week. Anyway, all the best. Carpe diem. Talk to you next time.